The coaching carousel continues to spin here as the regular season comes to an end and we look at championship weekend. Why is it spinning so fast? Why are we seeing firings and hirings happen at a rapid pace? Well, the new transfer portal window opens up December 5th, and there's a 45-day window there for programs to rebuild their rosters as players leave and they come in. And it's important to have the right head coach in place. So, where do we stand right now? 13 jobs in the FBS have come open at the top. Four of them have already been filled up. And in fact, a couple have been filled up just in the last 24 to 48 hours. And a couple more could fill up here very soon as Auburn and Georgia Tech look to try and finalize deals with targets there. So, where do we stand right now? Well, let's go out west at Arizona State, where Arizona State has hired Oregon offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham, an Arizona State alumnus who previously worked at Arizona State as a graduate assistant, then as an assistant coach, alongside Mike Norvell, who has gone to Memphis and is obviously now having success at Florida State. Kenny Dillingham, only 32 years old, and is now the youngest head coach in the Power Five, has a great scheming mind when it comes to calling plays, but also very underrated as a recruiter. That's how he kind of made his hay at Auburn previously for a year, Florida State under Mike Norvell, and in that 1 year at Oregon. And how can you discount what he did with Auburn quarterback transfer Bo Nix? He turned one of the bottom tier quarterbacks in the SEC as far as production into a Heisman Trophy contender in less than a year at Oregon, putting up numbers we haven't seen since the likes of Lamar Jackson when it comes to passing yards and touchdowns and rushing yards and touchdowns from a quarterback in college football. Kenny Dillingham understands the Valley. He's going to attack the transfer portal. He's going to attack the recruiting trail. And as we already saw in his introductory press conference on Sunday, he has reinvigorated that fan base that really needed it after the disaster that was the Herm Edwards era. They're also potentially facing some NCAA sanctions there resulting from the Herm Edwards era that they're going to have to deal with there. And Kenny Dillingham, building his staff, needs to keep that in mind. Potential for a bowl ban coming up, one that they probably should have self-imposed this past year. In fact, they had an opportunity to do so, but the administration there, which has been under a lot of fire, failed to do so. According to our Chris Cartman with Sun Devil Source, saying that they could have done that and maybe made it easier on the future coach. Well, they did not. And now they're playing kind of a game of chicken with the NCAA. But Kenny Dillingham, a great hire, a great fit for that program. How does he build that staff and how does he handle all of those distractions coming up down the road? Well, this is the job he wanted. This is the job he's been dreaming about for his entire life. He has landed there in the Valley. Also, Wisconsin, the big mover here so far. Everybody assuming that defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard, who had been serving as the interim coach, would just be bumped up to head coach. Well, that's not the case. Wisconsin's shocking the college football world by hiring Luke Fickell away from Cincinnati. How did this happen? Well, Luke Fickell was previously in conversation with some other Big Ten jobs over the last couple of years. In fact, he was up for the Michigan State job just a couple of years ago, and that didn't quite work out. Then last year, he probably had an opportunity to even go to a place like LSU in the SEC or even Notre Dame, but that didn't happen. Why? Timing is everything. Cincinnati was in the playoff hunt as the first group of five champion to reach the 4-team playoff. And timing was everything. Again, he didn't want to leave that. The potential to win a national championship with all those great players he had, he couldn't go off and go interview or leave the program for that matter if he were to take another job, such as Notre Dame when it came open when Brian Kelly left for LSU. So, is it surprising he's going to Wisconsin? Yes, but if you look at it, it makes a lot of sense. He's going into a stable program that has won the Big Ten West and gone to the Big Ten championship game 4 of the last 9 seasons. They win 9 or 10 games practically every year. Well, except for this one, but obviously they're going through a coaching change. He can go there and continue what he's been doing at Cincinnati, which was a preparer to go to the Big 12 next season. But now that he goes to Wisconsin, he's got better facilities, more money to deal with there, and probably a fan base that's going to support him much more than, say, Cincinnati would have. And Luke Fickell is the model of success when it comes to a group of 5 coaches. and he matches what Wisconsin does year to year as a 9 or 10 win coach. He's 57-18 in 6 years leading Cincinnati. And that is exactly what Wisconsin needs. They need to emerge as a challenger alongside Penn State against the likes of a Michigan and Ohio State in the Big Ten, particularly as they get rid of divisions here in the very near future. The days of just winning the Big Ten West with a couple of losses are not going to cut it going forward without divisions. And Luke Fickell is the one to drive them there, according to the administrators at Wisconsin. The biggest hire yet so far on this coaching carousel. Moved to Nebraska. Word broke pretty quickly that Matt Rhule was in the running there. Then it cooled off. And then finally Nebraska got their man, and Matt Rhule signing a 8-year deal worth $9 million on average per season. The former Carolina Panthers head coach in the NFL was a big bust on the pro level, but tremendously successful at Temple and Baylor. Temple winning 10 games in back-to-back seasons, and then going to Baylor, where in his third year he won 11 games. How did he do it? The guy is a master builder with rosters, and that is what Nebraska needs. They have great support financially and with the fan support and the facilities, but they're kind of in no man's land there in the Midwest as far as trying to be an emerging football power. This is not Nebraska that we're accustomed to seeing in the early 1990s or, of course, in the 1980s. It's been a long time. And to get things going, you have to start from the ground level up. You've got to build the roster. And now Matt Rhule's got an extra weapon in his tool belt, so to speak, and that's the transfer portal. He didn't have that necessarily at Baylor and Temple, where players can come in and be immediately eligible. Now he can go out and, with his fantastic analytic mind and finding guys who have great pursuit angles and are faster maybe than they are in straight line compared to where they are going around a certain route and everything they need to fit in, Matt Rhule's that guy. And he's already reportedly eyeing his former talent evaluator in Evan Cooper, who joined him with the Carolina Panthers, but was his main recruiting coordinator at Baylor to help build that program and the roster they had. Nebraska got to start from the ground up, build a nice roster, and now with the transfer portal opening up December 5th, they have their man in place to start building things from the ground up. You're going to have to give that one a few years, but Matt Rhule, the master architect, one that's a lot of coaches have been trying to emulate here over the last 5 years because of what he did at Temple and at Baylor and building those rosters. They'll be fascinating to watch as they move forward. Also, late news breaking early Sunday morning on the West Coast. Stanford coach David Shaw stepping down after a decade-plus career there as the winningest coach in Stanford history. Stanford at a crossroads here. Yes, they can pay a lot of money to their head coach. In fact, David Shaw, despite his contract being private there because of being a private university, was earning nearly $7 million a year, according to our sourcing. So who can they go hire there? Well, they're going to have to find someone that can navigate the transfer portal and maybe do so without a lot of NIL money at their disposal there at Stanford. They're still trying to figure things out and catch up with everything. And of course, you're dealing with a tremendous academic institution there where the academic requirements are going to limit your talent base a little bit too. I think David Shaw, who has been a little bit against the transfer portal, has been against this idea of where college football has been going, stepping aside, yes, surprising, but when he put it all together, it made sense for him. How can you fix that? What kind of coach do you need to get in there? Here are some names you need to keep an eye on. Number one, Sacramento State coach Troy Taylor. They're 11-0 right now in the FCS. Fantastic offensive mind. Has experience coaching in California, including in the Bay Area. Someone they should look at. And by the way, don't knock the idea of hiring FCS coaches, as we've seen with Lance Leopold at Kansas, with previously at Buffalo, and then even before that, Wisconsin Whitewater, Chris Kleiman at Kansas State. And by the way, one of Stanford's most successful coaches ever was an FCS coach. His name was Jim Harbaugh. Also, Chris Peterson, the former Boise State and Washington coach, still on the West Coast, now an analyst for Fox Sports. Does he want to get back into coaching? He'd be a number, though. They should be calling and seeing if he'd be interested. And also, here's some other names you should really keep an eye on. Derek Mason, the former Vanderbilt head coach and now defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State. He was once the defensive coordinator there at Stanford, knows the area very well, would be a very solid hire and someone that I'm sure they'll want to talk to, or at the very least, maybe even try to get on staff as a defensive coordinator under the new coach that they hire. And then Rice head coach Mike Bloomgren, former Stanford offensive line coach there previously as well, has connections, is doing kind of well at Rice. I know they're 5-7 right now, but considering where he took that program over and where they are now, they've made a lot of progress, and he's maybe have hit his head on the ceiling there at Rice and what they're able and capable of achieving. Then, of course, you have a lot of big other jobs that are open right now. Colorado, Georgia Tech, USF, FAU, and Texas State. One or two of those jobs may fill up here while I'm actually recording this, in fact. And one of those jobs is Georgia Tech. Right now, I could tell you Tulane coach Willie Fritz has been in discussions with them the past couple of days. Tulane about to play for the AAC championship when they host UCF this weekend. But will Willie Fritz be the coach there? I think he will coach through this end of this week. They're working on a contract right now. If that works out, Willie Fritz will end up being the next coach at Georgia Tech and would be considered a huge hire. Willie Fritz, a couple of years ago, was in the running for the job at Kansas and was considered maybe one of the hotter names that could potentially did land there. But now Kansas' loss is Georgia Tech's gain, it appears. USF and FAU. Some names to potentially keep an eye on there include Indiana's Tom Allen. Yes, that's a weird thing to say considering he's a Big Ten coach right now, but things have cooled there with recruiting. His record hasn't been all that great the last couple of years. If he were to try and look to get out, USF or FAU would make sense for him. He's a Florida guy with a lot of connections there, as previously serving as a high school coach on that level. And Colorado, what is going to happen there for the Buffaloes? Our 24/7 Sports affiliate here has been reporting for the bulk of the last 4 to 5 days that Deion Sanders, the Jackson State coach, had been offered there, and they have been in discussions about the job, but it's been quiet over the weekend. What does that mean? No one knows. Deion Sanders is very quiet about all of this, and he's not going to let things leak. He just never does that. Now, does that mean he's not interested in Colorado? No, but his name has come up in several spots. Some school presidents want to say that they're worried about his history with Prime Academy and everything that failed with that. But this is a guy that, if you talk to people in the industry, believes that he is such a unique and different and special personality in the way he cares for players and these young men and building programs and going about it the right way, that he would be a home run no matter where he was at, whether it was at Jackson State, whether it's at in the NFL, or at a place like Colorado. What he does is just win and develop players and bring people together. And that would be a gigantic hire, and one, of course, that would rock college football to its core if that were to be made. But Deion Sanders has a lot to think about. The HBCUs are very important to him, of course, as they should be. And he may decide just to say, I'm going to stay at Jackson State and continue to build this thing and help out other universities on the FCS level. So that's where the coaching carousel stands at this very second. It may very well change in the next few seconds. It's just a crazy time of year right now, especially with this unique opportunity we're seeing with a transfer portal that opens wide on December 5th.